So I am delighted to see you all. And I am looking forward to sharing what I came up with for this week. So I can do that momentarily. Okay, I just have too many screens open on my computer. Okay, here we go. So before we get started, let's just take a few moments to settle and just get here, be here, as opposed to the process of getting here. So I invite you to just take a few breaths, sitting comfortably, breathing in a natural way, not needing to force the breath at all. Inhaling and exhaling. And recalling the words of Thich Nhat Hanh. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment. I know this is a wonderful moment. And so we allow ourselves to really be here, fully present, and reasonably calm. So this week, we are reading Parsha Tzav. And this Parsha is filled with instructions to the priests regarding sacrifices. So last week, it was instructions to the people. And this week's, it's the instructions to the priests. And one of the things that was pointed out in a couple of different commentaries that I read is that this was pretty revolutionary for the time, because in the time in that area, the priests would get the instructions and it was really kept secret. So the fact that the people also got the instructions is impressive. And the Parsha ends with the process of ordination for the priests. So with this focus continuing on sacrifices, I really needed to look for metaphors because I'm not so into sacrifices. So, so what I'm going to do, with your indulgence, is read the first 6 verses of this Parsha, and I'm going to interrupt my reading by highlighting a couple of things, and then we're going to really go into it. So we're focusing today on these first 6 verses. So the Parsha starts with this. Yud-He Vav-He spoke to Moses, saying, command Aaron and his sons thus. This is the ritual of the burnt offering. The burnt offering itself shall remain where it is burned upon the altar all night until morning, while the fire on the altar is kept going on it. So the fire needs to keep going all night, and the offering was presumably put on during the day and is burning this entire time. The priests shall dress in linen raiment with linen breeches next to his body, and he shall take up the ashes to which the fire has reduced the burnt offering on the altar and place them beside the altar. So we have very specific clothing for the priest to wear. And as the offering burns, it creates ashes. The ashes are on the altar, and the priest has this job of moving the ashes to the side of the altar, beside the altar. He shall then take off his vestments and put on other vestments and carry the ashes outside the camp to a pure place. So we have a wardrobe change, which is interesting in and of itself. And the ashes get moved from beside the altar to outside the camp to a pure place. The fire on the altar shall be kept burning, not to go out. Every morning the priest shall feed wood to it, lay out the burnt offering on it, and turn into smoke the fat parts of the offering of well-being. So first of all, this is an offering of well-being. So it's not a sin offering or anything like that. And the fire is not to go out, and the priest's job is to kind of stoke the fire every morning before the offering is laid on the fire. And then the last line, a perpetual fire shall be kept burning on the altar, not to go out. So that not to go out is repeated. We know that that's significant anytime anything is repeated in the Torah. And it is the priest's job to make sure that this fire does not go out, that it's perpetual. So the instructions about this perpetual fire burning on the altar was really interesting to me. There are several pieces about this that were interesting to me. So first of all, let's put this in a context. We need the constancy of the fire in order for the sacrifice to happen. And we've talked about, last week, I think it was, that we talked about that many commentators are talking about the purpose of the sacrifices in the first place was to provide connection between the people, the Israelites, and this unknown, unseen, untouchable God. So the relationship between the people and the divine needed some sort of way to be concretized. And the sacrifice served that purpose. So the focus here really, for me, is on connection. And I'm looking at this as connection we have to ourselves, to our family members, to our friends, to our community. So there's this need for connection. The fire can be our desire, our energy, our passion, our love, our wisdom, that all feeds this connection. Hang in there with me. The altar is our heart. So we have this need to keep stoking the fire in our bodies, which we've talked about on other times. You know, that divine spark can be the fire. To keep stoking that fire on the altar of our hearts in order to stay connected. So stuff gets in the way of that. And maybe that's the ashes, I don't know. Maybe what's really being offered to us here in this parsha is the idea that we need to pay careful attention in the moment, and then things will unfold. So the other piece of this that was so interesting to me was that wardrobe change and the moving of the ashes. So first the ashes are moved from the altar to beside the altar, and then out to a safe and sacred place. And I think that we can look at the ashes as the distractions and the difficult emotions and thoughts that come up and really make so challenging the task of continuing to stoke that fire and to stay in the present moment. So the movement of the ashes can be the reminder that difficult stuff arises and we need to tend to it. we need to pay attention to it. So how do we pay attention? Well, one of them is that we change our posture or maybe change our clothing. We pay attention in the moment, and then we look at this difficulty that's arising, and instead of denying or just tossing them out, pretending it's not there, we pay attention, we notice. And we notice that this is important, whatever it is. It's important, even though it may feel like it's interfering with our tending the fire. So what we need to do is figure out how we notice what's arising and getting in the way and bring most of our attention back to stoking the fire, rather than allowing our attention to be so grabbed by what comes up. So an example is, if I'm sitting in meditation and I'm thinking in terms of bringing in love and expanding my heart space with love and care and concern, and I notice that my mind wanders, and it does all the time. And with me, it's usually thinking about the to-do list and the other things on my agenda. That's grabbing my attention. And I then have a couple of choices. One choice is to get angry at myself. There you go again, you can't even meditate. What are you doing? And you're trying to lead people. What kind of a, fraud are you? I can do that. Or I can say, oh, that's really important, and I'm afraid I'm going to forget it. So I stay with the list or the planning that I'm doing in my head. That's one option. Then I'm not stoking my fire. I'm paying attention to the ashes, but I'm letting the ashes become center stage. The third option is I say, oh, there I go, planning again, thinking about the future again. I'm going to put this here. I'm going to move this off my altar. I'm going to bring my attention back to the altar, back to the flame. And I know that those ashes are there, and I'll deal with them when I need to. So it's taking the bulk of my attention. If 80% of my attention is on stoking the flame, on staying with the intention, with the meditation, and only 20% is over there, I think I'm doing really well. I'm not looking for 100%. Would be nice, but that's very, very rare. So that helps me kind of manage to deal with the ashes and with the flame. So the idea is that we notice that there's something going on, and we want to keep the focus on the present moment and our intention, keep our attention on our intention, and allowing the acknowledgement that there are these distractions that come up. In looking at some commentaries, Rabbi Miriam Klotz used a term that I really liked, and she said, the fire can be the warmth of a loving, heart-centered wisdom. Heart-centered wisdom, I really like that. So we need mindful awareness of all of the challenges to maintain that heart-centered wisdom, which I'm referring to as the fire. So, and we need to acknowledge that there's a tendency when these thoughts and feelings come up that we have this tendency to really focus on them. And and we're saying today that we want to encourage that when these sensations or feelings or thoughts come up, that we notice them and choose to place them beside the altar, in our periphery, and recenter our focus on the altar of a loving heart. So with that, I invite you to take your posture, and we'll sit in some quiet meditation, and I will offer a little bit of guidance at the beginning. So allow yourself to really feel grounded where you're sitting. And nice deep breaths to help you settle and ground. And I invite you to bring your attention to your heart space. And you might want to just put your hand on your heart. And as you're breathing, notice the rise and fall of your chest. And if it's useful for you, imagine a fire burning in your heart. And you can see the colors of this fire. And feel its heat. And allow the warmth of this fire to spread through your body, in your torso, your arms, your legs, up to your head, and down to your toes. And this fire can represent all the love and passion and wisdom that you have. So you can allow your entire being to gaze upon these flames. And simply rest in this awareness. And when you notice harsh, judgmental, irritating, or simply unloving thoughts arise, see if you can practice, first of all, noticing and naming it, and then see if you can move your focus from those thoughts or images or sensations back to the image of the fires upon the altar of your loving heart. So I invite you to deepen your breath and begin to return to the room. And as you do so, I'm going to share The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be cleaning you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.